In January 2019, Steve Tallheimer joined Elkhart Community Schools as the superintendent. Within a few months of meeting with staff, parents, students, and community members, he noticed a pattern of comments around the High Ability program.
When I arrived at Elkhart Community Schools, there were a lot of people that came and spoke to me about concerns about the High Ability program. They felt that maybe identification procedures weren't clear. There were concerns about curriculum and programming. So I listened to many of those concerns and realized pretty quickly that I needed to dig myself into that and really understand what was going on. During my teaching career, I taught honors classes and dual credit classes, and I have two high ability sons myself, so I understand the importance of this to families. So when we entered that school year, I said, all right, I'll serve as high ability coordinator, as I'd done in previous career, and I just determined that I was going to dig in and find out what was going on. So I conducted meetings with parents, I really looked at our programming, had multiple meetings with high ability coordinators in order for us to determine what we really needed to do going forward for the best of kids.
Around the state and country, high ability programs exist in most school districts. For consistency with other districts, Elkhart Community Schools removed the PEP name from the High Ability program, simply calling it High Ability.
As I met with families and even talked to students, I found that that PEP name was very affectionate to them. It meant a lot to them. Students spoke rather longingly for the days when they were in that program, and parents, for them, it represented something special. So as we were thinking about what we needed to do to retool the High Ability program, it made a lot of sense that while PEP meant something, may not have meant anything to people outside of the district, it was important for us to reestablish the strength of that program and the good things that we were doing.
Continued research and interviews found that high ability parents felt disconnected from the program and ill-informed about what was happening within the program.
As we went through that year and I collected that information from parents and the high ability coordinators, conversations with principals, it became pretty clear that there was a pretty serious list of recommendations and needs that we had that grew out of that needs assessment. So based on that, I said to myself, I need somebody dedicated to work on high ability full time. The ability to retool that curriculum and make sure our identification procedures were in place and just generally strengthen that program was going to take somebody who was dedicated to that. So as we looked at retooling the whole Department of Exceptional Learners, so we look across that continuum and that spectrum of needs, just as we work really hard to make sure that we're taking care of students on the end with their special needs, we need to make sure that we're taking care of students on the other end. So we looked at that whole department and determined that a director of high ability was really necessary within that department to pay attention to that program.
In April 2020, the district hired Lisa Ernsberger as the director of high ability. Ernsberger's experience as high ability coordinator at Wawasee Community Schools and as the 2017 Indiana Association of the Gifted Leadership Award recipient positioned her as an excellent candidate to lead the program.
I could tell that Dr. Tolheimer had put us in a really good position to springboard some changes here for high ability at Elkhart Community Schools. So when I arrived, I continued those conversations that he was having with various stakeholders. And from those conversations, we felt that we needed to launch a guiding coalition. So in July of last year, we launched a guiding coalition with 5 different subcommittees. Those subcommittees being high ability services, curriculum, social emotional development, parent involvement, and professional development. From those guiding coalition conversations, we were able to identify our goals for the upcoming year. One of the big focuses was on services and curriculum, and so as we researched different practices across the country, as well as things that we had learned here from Elkhart Community Schools, we decided to launch forward with some centralized learning or a magnet location. Centralized learning or a magnet program for high ability is where the high ability students are put together full-time in a self-contained classroom. So research has shown over and over again that when high ability students are grouped together, when they have access to full-time high ability curriculum and full-time high ability supports, the gains that they make academically and social emotionally have been substantial.
There's one more every touchdown.
40 times 1.
40 times 1. You could also flip them, right?
Tim Myers is one of the teachers who has been instrumental in the High Ability program. He's been a teacher with Elkhart Schools for 16 years, including 7 years of working with high ability students in both general education settings as well as high-ability classrooms.
The question and answer ability with a contained group of 20 people like that small group is far more powerful and enriching for those students than to have them in a cluster or some other kind of mixture of students with the general. For the students to be able to be in their own peer group and to be able to challenge each other. When I get them like this in a small group, I can see them pushing each other more than I would in a general class. I don't have anything to drop. What can I add to drop?
0.
I can add another 0, sure. So how do you challenge a child who is bored? And some may say that that is an academic thing, which it is, but it also, if you get someone who's bored for too long, they tend to start checking out and tuning out, and we don't want that. So pushing that kind of, pushing the academic agenda to keep that out of their psyche, and so we want to keep that boredom out. Another is ultimate perfectionism. So they everybody else, but because they usually get all the answers correctly in the general classrooms, they have this idea that I should always be correct. And maybe the family has kind of perpetuated that by saying, you're so smart, you should know this. So the idea that it's okay for these kids to make mistakes because they are kids. So that is one that I really try to focus on, of making a safe environment that they can make mistakes, and to teach them that we know as adults that we're going to make plenty of mistakes and how to handle that and not melt down when those mistakes happen. Being in one place allows me to be able to work with that dynamic that you're going to get in a high ability class, more so than if this were a general class.
Prior to 2015, the district operated 3 centralized learning sites based on the location of qualified participants. As populations and trends shifted, some schools would find themselves with nearly empty classrooms, while others outgrew the space available to them.
When I came on board, we had the 3 centralized programs at Pinewood, Eastwood, and Cleveland. And what I noticed from those centralized programs was there wasn't any consistency in how they were approaching services or curriculum. And so one of the charges that I had was to provide this guaranteed and viable curriculum that would provide some consistency for our high ability students and families. And so by putting kids into a centralized location or a magnet location, they will have that guaranteed and viable curriculum. Students who want that choice and want that challenge will have access to some consistency from grade level to grade level as they continue to move up. And so that gives us really an opportunity to dive deep into different projects, different independent research that the students want to involve themselves in, gives us some opportunities for academic competitions that they might not have opportunities for in a 3 centralized sites or a cluster classroom situation.
In addition to the differentiated curriculum and instruction in all core subject areas, students will participate in social and emotional curriculum activities designed to address the specific needs of high-ability students.
The services committee within our guiding coalition really was looking at how we could have a tiered level of support for our high ability students. We recognize that some high ability students need an additional challenge than they were having in their centralized location or at their cluster school or in their neighborhood school. So we wanted to have something that would service all levels of high ability. So we rolled out a tiered program. So our tier 1 is basically serving kids through basic classroom differentiation and enrichment. Tier 2 would be meeting their needs in a cluster program, so cluster model, grouping high ability kids together in small groups at a neighborhood school. And then tier 3 was really where we would get those services that would be provided full time for kids. And so within that, we had to look at what location makes sense. So for those of us who were here a long time ago, Roosevelt actually used to house the former PEP program. And so when they were looking at rebuilding Roosevelt, it was essentially designed with high ability in mind. So we have access to a project room. We have access to different sinks and opportunities to do science experiments here. And we also have the space at Roosevelt. One of the other great functions and features of Roosevelt is we have a passageway to Pierre Moran Middle School. So if you have kids who need to take advanced science or advanced math, we can have them walk over with an instructional assistant to make sure their academic needs are getting met at the level that they need to be met at.
Throughout the history of Elkhart's High Ability program, the district has offered multiple choices for high ability students and parents based on what might be best for their individual child.
You can read it with me. The answer is between 30 and 80.
We wanted to make sure that families still had a choice to either attend their neighborhood school or attend at the magnet location. And so when families are making those choices between the two options, it really comes down to what does your kid need to be most successful. And so with the high ability magnet location, as I said, we're able to provide full-time high ability curriculum. We're able to provide additional extensions and enrichment opportunities that a classroom teacher is probably not going to have that opportunity or option to do so. We are also going to be able to provide these kids with access to trained high ability staff. And so, as I've heard from many parents, they can really tell a difference between somebody who's been trained in high ability and somebody who has a general license. And so these teachers are going to be either licensed trained teachers or going to be willing to obtain that licensure. So they're not only going to have access to people, peers that are at their intellectual level, but they're going to have access to those trained faculty members to give them the support that they need.
Within the walls of Roosevelt High Ability, we invite your family to see and experience a school like no other. If you would like to see it for yourself, please call the Department of Exceptional Learners to schedule a tour at 574-262-5867. The Roosevelt High Ability School opens in fall 2021. Applications will be accepted starting March 26th through April 16th. To apply, please complete the application packet that was mailed to you. Or, if you prefer, you can complete the application online.